Hello and welcome back to my video blog called Passion Designer to help you build your passion. Today I'm going to answer another question that was a follow-up question to the post that I had on the importance of writing a business plan. So there was a really great question on, do I recommend any books for motivation or to help you get started? I would divide this into two different sections. So books on motivation, I think, is one category, and then you can do more technical books depending on what your idea is or what idea you're thinking about. For motivation and inspiration, I compiled 4 books that have helped me. The first book that I would like to talk about is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, who wrote this book more than 25 years ago. It is still a timeless bestseller, and even though the author is not alive anymore, I actually didn't know who the author was until I read the book, and I read it in the past year, and I found the book to be extremely relevant to today's fast-paced life. And what's great about this book is that it really asks you to think of your dying day and what kind of a life you would have wanted to live and kind of track it back from there. He asks you to write your own mission statement about how you see your life and what are the things you want to do, which kind of really makes a nice framework. And for example, after reading this book, I had a lot of things on my to-do list that I don't have time to do. So for example, reading was one of them. I knew I really wanted to read daily, but I didn't know how to incorporate it into my busy life, especially as an entrepreneur, because I'd come home in the evening and I'd be so tired. The last thing I want to do is read a book. So what I did is that when I realized this was important, I incorporated reading into my daily routine, even if it meant a page or two. What I do now is also during the workday, if time permits, on my coffee break, let's say at 11 a.m., I'll actually sit down and read for half an hour. So now that I made reading part of my work routine, it feels much better. And the reason I felt that it was important, and I do recommend everybody reads daily, is that when you're caught up in your daily, day-to-day work stuff, you are not very inspired. You're thinking about the daily challenges, and then when you need to be creative or think of the next new thing, your mind is not thinking creatively. So for me, reading is a way, like exercise, to keep myself constantly inspired, constantly thinking about a new concept, a new collection or whatnot. For example, I'm reading this book called The Silk Roads right now, and it's really building images in my mind. So definitely recommend this book to whether you're looking to get started or you're looking to balance out your entrepreneurial life, to kind of reassess all your values. Like, are you spending enough time with family, or do you really want to stay that much at work at the compromise of being with your children during their childhood? So it kind of just really touches on your core values. So great read there. Another book that I recommend that I'm reading right now is called Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh. And I bought this book this summer when I visited the Zappos headquarters. And I find it very inspiring because not only does he talk about a new approach to the way a company should be run, which is very inspiring to a business owner and I think for people who would want to work for you. He also talks a lot about his hardships, and this is a guy who went to Harvard and he was making really great money from the beginning, and how he nearly lost it all trying to build this business. And it also makes you feel like you're not alone in your hardships, because I think often as an entrepreneur you might feel isolated, like, hey, look at all these successful businesses, why isn't mine up there? And when you read this, you really see that all these companies went through all these hardships, and how you really don't know at what point it's going to pick up. So it's a great read. I highly recommend it. Another book I recommend, which I don't have here with me, so I just printed the cover so you can recognize it, is The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. I read this book before I started my business, even when I was just thinking about it. And what I really enjoyed about this book is the way they talk about how outliers set the trends, that we never know what the trends are, and how something innovative comes from people who we don't find mainstream, and how ideas picked up and how they kind of pick up and then become a main trend. And it's just a great read, I think, to think about, well, what can I do that's new and how is what I'm doing unique? You have to really have that unique angle on whatever it is that you're doing. So this book kind of starts to generate ideas and thoughts in your head. If you are a creative business, or if you're not even a business, maybe you're a painter or a musician or a writer, and sometimes you have like a writer's block or you really can't create. A book that really helped me when I was studying in Paris and my school was so tough and they would criticize all my work, and at one point I felt like I can't create anymore. A great read for me was a book that a friend of mine recommended. Ebru recommended me to read this book called Free Play. And it's a book by Steven Naknamovich, and it says Free Play, the power of improvisation in life and the arts. And what's great about this book, it really emphasizes your uniqueness. So as people, we all have our own speaking style or the way we dance, and it's kind of unconscious, and it talks about the unconscious mind and creativity. And you do feel like, well, I can do something unique, and it's true that I dance the way that I dance and I speak the way that I speak. So it really felt very comforting and inspiring from a creative perspective. So those are my 4 recommendations, and you can find all of them online. Just Google them and it will come up on Amazon. The books so that's from, like, even if you're not doing business, if you just want great reads, these are great books to read for everyone and anyone. If you are looking for more technical books, let's say you're like, well, I've never run a business. How do I run a business? I wrote my first business plan 10 years ago. And basically what I did is I went to a bookstore. At the time, I went to FIT's fashion. I was living in New York studying at NYU. I went to Fashion Institute of Technology and looked at their reading list and took their books. I found a great book on consumer behavior, how do people buy? I think it was called Why of the Buy or something like this. At that time, there was also a really famous book on fashion retail, which kind of just told you how to run a fashion business, like what's production, marketing, sizing. And it was like the first kind of groundbreaking book for me to really understand the wholeness of that business. I don't want to recommend any business books because the ones that I read and had were from 10 years ago. I recommend you read and buy something that's been updated at least in the past year, because social media and online marketing has immensely changed the way the industry works. And I think not only from a marketing perspective, but it also affects how to get noticed, how to sell, how to retain your customers, how the financials, it greatly affects your financials. I think in a positive way, it makes business much more accessible, and you can start a business with a smaller budget than 10 years ago, let's say. So go onto Amazon, type in how to write a business plan, look at the bestsellers, look at the ones that are recommended by schools or respected institutions. Read the general business books, but also look at the ones that are connected to the business you're thinking about. Let's say you want to have a bakery or a restaurant business. Read the theories on how to run a restaurant business, and it will, even if you're not a business person, it will make you have to, if you plan to have a business, you have to understand the fundamentals of it. And also, maybe you'll read it and you'll be like, this is not for me, I really don't want to get involved, or I want to have a business, but the business side is not for me, so I definitely need a business partner. So these books will help you understand that and create a format or maybe some exercises that you can do, but make sure it's something current and something not a random person wrote, but someone who really knows what they're talking about. I think expertise is quite important. I always do look if it's a bestseller. I do look if the book has been around for a while or not, if it has been updated or not for business related stuff. So good luck, and let me know what you think. If you've read those books, if you found them useful, I would love to hear back on any recommendations maybe for me.